Alrighty, everybody, what is going on? Welcome back to another CYPRX fundamental and technical analysis video breakdown. In today's update, this is going to be a two-part video series. We're just going to discuss and talk about the current market sentiment, going over the risk-off backdrop that we are currently experiencing in the total cryptocurrency market cap, so that as my followers, you guys have a complete understanding of the mechanics behind this current sentiment that we are living through. And then in the second portion of today's video breakdown, I want to give a shout out to Yuval Ruse from Digital Asset for having me as the co-host on one of his first spaces on X. This was such a phenomenal space, and I want to play some video clips going over through some common misunderstandings and some comments that have recently been made on the Canton network, and just really play some video clips, some highlights from this particular space. In case you all missed it, you guys can find the replay over on my X account or on Yuval's X account. Highly suggest you guys go and watch it. It made me completely rethink my portfolio, honest to God, in 2026 moving forward via some of the things that Yuval said. I want to play some of those highlights in part two of today's video breakdown for you all. So with that being said, we'll cover the technical analysis backdrop. I'll give you guys some updated levels to be mindful of and paying attention to, at least that I'm personally paying attention to on Canton via our updates and our institutional deltas. We gave you guys some updates just a couple of hours ago, depending on when you're watching this, most likely a day or two ago. But our software has generated some new levels to be mindful of as we head into the brand new month of February. And you guys have seen, if you've been tracking along with us, how accurate our software is. So we'll give you guys those updates in today's part one as well. All right. But before we even start that, let's hit the foundations first. Let's understand what took place last week. So last week, why risk sentiment was absolutely screwed and won't most likely turn around until we see a shift in sentiment from one or any or all of these things. So last week, we had rising tensions between the United States and Iran, Donald Trump backing war, which is one of the most hawkish Fed president candidates, and Russia-Ukraine tensions still unresolved, ongoing Japanese yen intervention fears. We had no resolution in Congress voting over tariffs, pushing back until roughly around February to June, which leaves uncertainty on the table. We had unresolved talks involving Greenland, partial U.S. government shutdown on Friday last week. We had core PPI inflation come out much hotter than expected. We had the Federal Reserve signaling fewer rate cuts, signaling at maybe only one rate cut in 2026, if any at all, leaving the markets in a data-dependent wait-and-see approach. And then we also have the vote on Fed President Lisa Cook still pending, questioning the Fed's independence. Put simply, we had no easing for now, no stability, no policy clarity, no inflation relief, i.e. no reason for aggressive risk-taking, and large institutions clearly showed that hand last week as they de-risked from riskier assets, particularly like crypto, all right? So all of these things in a nutshell were some things contributing to the risk-off sentiment last week. Now, if you guys don't know how to track these things and you need a safe, solid place to track and stay up to date with these types of fundamentals, again, we'd love to have you on the team inside the private CYPRX community every single day of the week. Sunday through Thursday, we host private Zoom calls going over the risk-off backdrop, hand-typed out fundamental reports, going over the entire landscape and taking a look at what to expect for the days ahead and weeks to come. Now, with that being said, let's go on this update. All right. So risk sentiment. This is as of time of recording. This is Monday, February 2nd, starting the month off of February right for you guys. Risk sentiment still remains fragile as multiple uncertainties continue to weigh on markets, including U.S.-Iran tensions, lingering negotiations involving Greenland and Denmark, yen intervention risks, and unresolved issues around Congress tariffs vote, the government shutdown, and government spending. At the same time, investors still remain cautious after Donald Trump backed Kevin Warsh, with markets expecting tighter liquidity and less QE. However, if we begin to see positive outcomes on any of these fronts alongside any economic data this week or in the coming weeks ahead that support rate cuts and easing from the Federal Reserve, risk appetite could return quickly. So these things in this post, if you guys don't follow me on X, make sure that you guys save this post and start tracking these fundamental headlines, because if we see a turnaround in any one of these things, that could bring back the risk on sentiment. Until then, capital is likely to remain defensive, with caution continuing to dominate over aggressive risk taking. Once these things de-escalate, risk sentiment will return sharply, in my firm belief, not financial advice, and crypto prices will likely have a very strong recovery. But we need to see sentiment shift on one or all of these fronts. Now, with that being said, going into our most recent update inside our private CYPRX community, we did have some economic data today slightly lifting the market sentiment. Today, if you go over to the Forex Factory calendar, we had the final manufacturing and ISM manufacturing PMI figures come out relatively upbeat compared to the forecast and previous readings. So, what did this do to the market sentiment today? Again, as I mentioned, we give highlights and updates to our private community members every single morning so they stay in the loop with what is happening. Well, why are we seeing roughly about $69 billion at time of recording flood back into the crypto ecosystem? You guys can see here, we're up about $68 billion on the day over to the right-hand side. What is going on? Why did sentiment slightly shift? Well, just coming over and reading our slight update from this rising, I said here, today we saw MNQ bounce, which is a futures pair, bounce from the intraday lows, and crypto added roughly about $50 billion, finding some support and temporarily poking back above the dark pool at $2.6 trillion after an expansion in the overall economy was shown, highlighted by the rebound in manufacturing activity. And a stronger PMI tends to boost investor sentiment because it signals improving demand, healthier corporate earnings, and greater economic stability. When data from the Institute for Supply Management shows manufacturing moving back into growth territory, it suggests businesses are receiving more orders, increasing production, and gaining confidence in future conditions. This often leads investors to expect stronger revenues, better profit margins, and lower recession risks. That's a key important word right there. Recession risks, lowering them, right? Which tends to support higher valuations in stocks and other risk assets like crypto. At the same time, economic expansion reduces fears of widespread layoffs or financial stress, making capital more willing to flow into equities and crypto. In short, when the economy shows signs of sustained growth, it reinforces confidence that risk taking is justified, helping shift sentiment toward a more risk on environment. Now, we aren't out of deep water yet. This to me was just a return of intraday risk sentiment in an oversold environment after last week's sell off in global risk assets. I am still cautiously optimistic of the things that we discussed in the above updates. And of course, I give these updates to the private community members every single day, going over different links, different fundamental backdrops, and highlighting these reports for them. But I touched on those things to be mindful of in this post for you guys. All right. So that is kind of where we're at in the market conditions. Be mindful of these things in the coming days ahead. We also have a huge data week ahead on the US front with non-farm payroll and labor market data this week in focus. Again, if you guys want information on how to track that stuff on an intraday basis, head over to CYPRXtrading.com. We hand type these fundamental reports out for our private community, and we are definitely going to be fixating our attention this week on non-farm payroll, labor market data, unemployment rates, so on and so forth. Coming over here to the technical analysis aspect, let's just take a quick look at the updated dark pools and deltas that we gave you guys over on Canton. Now, remember, we give access to over 100 probably different crypto trading pairs with these accurate institutional insights and updates in our private CYPRX Discord. This is just Canton. Now, we did have some new levels pop up on both Canton and XRP. This is not an XRP-oriented video breakdown, but nonetheless, if you guys want those updates on the XRP levels to be mindful of for DCA levels, both sell and buy dark pools, you guys can head over to my Twitter, and that post, that picture is in this post. All right. Specifically focusing on Canton. All right, let's go over this update. I said key levels to watch. If we can see buyers remain aggressive above this level, we have a chance at seeing Canton coin break above the 19,214 psychological level and continue with its price discovery into higher levels mentioned in our previous update between roughly around 21 to 26 cents. The level to be mindful of that we're paying very close attention to right now is the 18,194. Can we hold it as support? And if we can, that will most likely open the door for higher prices. I'll go over that in just a second. However, caution to the downside still remains and cannot be overlooked. I repeat, cannot be overlooked. We're not bullish moonboy hypists here. We are very realistic and active day traders, and we know that downside risks still remain. So if we see sellers trap buyers at these highs and become aggressive enough to push price below the 18,194 support, a case for a deeper correction is still on the table. Our first bearish targets to accumulate some more Canton coin at a discount if the 18194 fails to support price and turns resistance with aggressive sellers following through would be roughly around the 14 to 12 cent psychological level. So let's head over to the charts real fast before we roll over into part two and take a quick look at Canton Coin's price action. On the lower time frames, particularly on the 2 hour front, I just want to show you guys that right now we are holding support at the 18194 that we mentioned in that particular post. What I am noticing is that right now we are still holding this overall bullish price action where you guys can see there was previous sellers that existed at the 18194. They tried to make an attempt to defend at this price level. Buyers overpowered them and created a new high in the market. And so now we are operating in this new A to B move. This bullish leg right now is our key threshold on Canton, in my personal opinion, where we can constantly see sellers defending at highs, pushing price back down into this support range or this base, and buyers defending again. It has now happened for the third time here in this area. And yet again, buyers are still strong, supporting price and continuing to push price to the upside. So right now, the levels that I'm being mindful of on Canton Coin is as long as we can hold above the 18194, and as long as price does not break bearish below this current base, or where buyers have recently defended price, continuing to push price back to the upside every single time sellers try to make an attempt to overpower buyers, as long as we do not see a break bearish below the current base that is holding price above, I have a firm belief that we're likely to continue to see Canton's price action reach price discovery. So anything above roughly around 17 cents flat, i.e. the bottom of this base, and anything above 18194 continues to open the door for further upside on Canton's price. So something like this, a possible pullback one more time into the base, maybe even something clearing out these lows, sweeping, sellers getting trapped, buyers defending and becoming aggressive enough to push price back to the upside, still opens the door for higher prices on Canton. Or just a continuation and momentum move from where we currently stand, turning the 19214 into a support, breaking above it, and continuing with its overall price discovery. Above the current levels that we are currently trading at now, to the upside, we have the 22582, the 26110, and we did have a 27-cent psychological level on our radar. However, right now, these are the levels that we're being mindful of to the upside. So if we can break above 19214, the next level and area of interest to be focused on is going to be anywhere between 21 to 22 cents. To the downside, as I mentioned, first, if we break bearish below the 18194, there is still a possibility that this base at around 17 cents could hold. However, if we break bearish below the 17-cent threshold, that is going to be a key signal to be prepared for a deeper retracement on Canton Coin's price action. If a break below this current base on Canton's price action at roughly around 17 cents and a failure to hold support at the 18194 does take place, the next bearish targets on our radar come in at around 14 to 12 cents before we start to look to accumulate some more Canton Coin. However, right now that seems like a very far stretch away. So just keep those targets on your radar as a possibility. If we do see sellers overpower buyers with enough strength and momentum to break beneath the lows at 17 cents, then that will be a case to open the door for these lower level targets. Until that comes into fruition, I'm personally expecting more upside momentum on Canton's price. Now, something I do want you all to be mindful of on the daily is that if we go to the daily, right now, what I am paying attention to is that these triple moving averages are starting to trail at around these lower level dark pools. So you can see right now, the 18 and the 50 EMA comes in roughly at around 14, or the 14,801 cent psychological level dark pool. So a healthy correction, if it did come into fruition, I would most likely see a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt over on Twitter. But a healthy correction, just like how we saw it here, we had a huge extension on Canton's price action and price came back to retest the EMAs. we respected the 50 EMA and price continued higher. If we do see a bullish move and more price discovery on Canton, I would not be surprised if at some point in time we do come back to revisit the triple moving average. So don't be surprised if that happens. On the daily, we are still well above the triple moving average crossover, where the triple moving average is acting as a support. But we are starting to see these triple moving averages align with dark pools. So I wouldn't be surprised if we did see a pullback if we came down into these lower level areas before price continued higher. Just something to be mindful of, not saying that that's going to happen right away, but something to definitely pay attention to if those lower levels break on Canton that we just discussed and talked about. But for now, it seems like buyers are in control at this current time of recording, and higher prices are set to come into fruition as long as price stays supported above the levels that we just mentioned. That is it for the first portion of today's video breakdown. As always, giving you guys real accurate technical analysis, no crazy, insane, moonboy, hypey bullcrap, or over hypey retail speculation. If you guys enjoyed this quick video update, do me that favor, smash that thumbs up button and subscribe to the platform. Remember, you guys have access to hundreds of institutional dark pool and delta updates inside the private CYPRX Discord. You guys can see here we have XLM, XDC, Quant, ETH, Bitcoin, HBAR, XRP, XLR, Solana, Ondo, the list goes on. Because if you come up here in our crypto delta section, you can ask our institutional scalper for any updates on any trading pair that our algorithms can track volume on. So as always, hope to see you guys inside the private CYPRX community. We'd love to have you on the team. With that being said, I'll see you guys in part 2 of today's video breakdown.